but as she was now in Mrs. Carbuncle's house, she would repay herself a portion of the loan by remaining there and eating it out. She did not exactly say how much Mrs. Carbuncle had borrowed, but she left an impression on Frank's mind that it was about 10 times the actual sum. With this excuse he was not satisfied, and told her that she must go to Scotland, if only for the sake of escaping from the Carbuncle connection. She promised to obey him if he would be her convoy. The Easter holidays were just now at hand, and he could not refuse on the plea of time. "Oh, Frank, do not refuse me this. Only think how terribly forlorn is my position." He did not refuse, but he did not quite promise. He was still tender-hearted towards her in spite of her enormities. One iniquity, perhaps her worst iniquity, he did not yet know. He had not as yet heard of her disinterested appeal to Lucy Morris. When he left her she was almost joyous for a few minutes, till the thought of her coming interview with Mr. Camperdown again overshadowed her. She had dreaded 2 things chiefly: her first interview with her cousin Frank after he should have learnt the truth, and those perils in regard to perjury with which Lord George had threatened her. Both these bugbears had now vanished. That dear man, the Major, had told her that there would be no such perils, and her cousin Frank had not seemed to think so very much of her lies and treachery. He had still been affectionate with her. He would support her before the magistrate, and would travel with her to Scotland. And after that, who could tell what might come next? How foolish she had been to trouble herself as she had done, almost to choke herself with an agony of fear, because she had feared detection. Now she was detected, and what had come of it? That great officer of justice, Major Mackintosh, had been almost more than civil to her, and her dear cousin Frank was still a cousin, dear as ever. People, after all, did not think so very much of perjury such as hers, committed in regard to one's own property. It was that odious Lord George who had frightened her instead of comforting, as he would have done had there been a spark of the true Corsair poetry about him. She did not feel comfortably confident as to what might be said of her by Lady Glencora and the Duke of Omnium, but she was almost inclined to think that Lady Glencora would support her. Lady Glencora was no poor mealy-mouthed thing, but a woman of the world who understood what was what. Lizzie no doubt wished that the trials and examinations were over. But her money was safe. They could not take away Portray, nor could they rob her of 4,000 a year. As for the rest, she could live it down. She had ordered the carriage to take her to Mr. Camperdown's chambers, and now she dressed herself for the occasion. He should not be made to think, at any rate by her outside appearance, that she was ashamed of herself. But before she started she had just a word with Mrs. Carbuncle. "I think I shall go down to Scotland on Saturday," she said, proclaiming her news not in the most gracious manner. "That is if they'll let you go," said Mrs. Carbuncle. "What do you mean? Who is to prevent me?" "The police. I know all about it, Lady Eustace, and you need not look like that. Lord George informs me that you will probably be locked up to day or to morrow." "Lord George is a story-teller. I don't believe he ever said so. And if he did, he knows nothing about it." "He ought to know, considering all that you have made him suffer. That you should have gone on, with the necklace in your own box all the time, letting people think that he had taken it, and accepting his attentions all the while, is what I cannot understand. And however you were able to look those people at Carlisle in the face passes me. Of course, Lady Eustace, you can't stay here after what has occurred." "I shall stay just as long as I like, Mrs. Carbuncle." Poor dear Lucinda! I do not wonder that she should be driven beyond herself by so horrible a story. The feeling that she had been living all this time in the same house with a woman who had deceived all the police, has been too much for her. I know it has been almost too much for me." And yet, as Lizzie at once understood, Mrs. Carbuncle knew nothing now which she had not known when she made her petition to be taken to Portray. And this was the woman, too, who had borrowed her money last week, whom she had entertained for months at Portray, and who had pretended to be her bosom friend. "You are quite right in getting off to Scotland as soon as possible, if they will let you go," continued Mrs. Carbuncle. "Of course you could not stay here. Up to Friday night it can be permitted. But the servants had better wait upon you in your own rooms." "How dare you talk to me in that way?" screamed Lizzie. "When a woman has committed perjury," said Mrs. Carbuncle, holding up both her hands in awe and grief, "nothing too bad can possibly be said to her. You are amenable to the outraged laws of the country, and it is my belief that they can keep you upon the treadmill and bread and water for months and months, if not for years." Having pronounced this terrible sentence, Mrs. Carbuncle stalked out of the room. "That they can sequester your property for your creditors, I know," she said, returning for a moment and putting her head within the door. The carriage was ready, and it was time for Lizzie to start if she intended to keep her appointment with Mr. Camperdown. She was much flustered and weakened by Mrs. Carbuncle's ill usage, and had difficulty in restraining herself from tears. And yet what the woman had said was false from beginning to end. The maid who was the successor of Patience Crabstick was to accompany her, and as she passed through the hall she so far recovered herself as to be able to conceal her dismay from the servants. Chapter 71.